Appreciate it. I'm Chair Schneider, with Kim Warren, helping out the Formation Commission on this project, and a lot of y'all. So thanks a lot for joining us here on a Saturday. I think it's a good chance to kind of sit down and talk about this in more detail. And we talked about that, so I'm really excited to be here. Kind of an agenda, we're going to go over a real brief presentation, but this is meant to be more open, free-flowing discussion. I want us to get more into the weeds today. That's the purpose of kind of this focus meeting. So we had a bigger public meeting just a few weeks ago. A lot of y'all attended. This is the first meeting that we're doing. We'll have a focused meeting, and then we're going to do another one. I think May 3rd, if I'm mistaken, that's correct. So May 3rd, we'll be doing another one. Thank you all for your time. I will spend about 2 hours today really getting into the real details. We are scheduled till noon, so if y'all want to talk further, we're here, and we can definitely do that. But what I'm going to do is really just open it up for discussion or introduction, because we have a couple people on Zoom, it looks like two. And so what I'm going to do today is really just kind of give you an update on what we're doing, just whatever that pretty high level, and then again to more of the discussion. But I do want to go around the table and talk with everybody and kind of get a feel for your name, obviously, who you're representing, and what do you want to get out of today? I really want to hear kind of what's your priority for today. You can hear me on Zoom. Okay. So again, I'll start, and I'm going to go around this way, and then we are going to have folks on the Zoom call introduce themselves. So again, give me your name, who you're representing, and what you'd like to get out of today. So start with you, sir.
I'm not sure about representing anything, but my name is Glenn Fisk. My wife Barbara's here with me. We're just concerned citizens of Baum, not liking to see what has happened in Fishhawk, Brandon, and some of Riverview. Don't want to have happen here, and that's why we took our community plan several years ago that the county commission, that the county has approved. And it keeps getting sidestepped when they try to come here. I just want to try to do our best to keep to the community plan for Baum.
Thanks, Glenn.
My name is Jimmy Franklin, been here since '85, my wife and I. This is a beautiful place we moved out here. Last 10 years, it's really gone downhill. It's only going to go downhill. There's not enough water to go around. I don't know if the county's going to get this water. They don't have a slide up there. I idea where they're going to get the water. It's not available. The developer is just going to come in here and make money. And then they're going to leave and go to another place and absolutely destroy it too. That's just the way of life. And it's all about money. It's not about anything else. They don't care about this place. It's just a buck. I'm over it.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
My name is Parker. I live just across the road here. I ended up this rural town. I moved here because I liked the area. I haven't lived here too long. I've been here 4.5 years. But I'd like to see it stay placed the way it is now. I understand that there should be the infrastructure put in place. My opinion is that the tractors going up down the road since I it's all group, there's no other way of getting in or around anything.
All right, thanks, sir.
Buddy Harwell. I moved out here in 2004. I actually moved from Riverview. I searched Hillsborough County for 3 years looking for a spot. This is the third place that I had a contract on, and it went through. I picked it for the rural area, open, going to be houses, nice neighborhoods, just open land. Trying to get away from the urban setting and stuff. And it seems to follow it. You know, we want lots, you know, or agricultural, and, that's pretty much it.
Thanks, buddy.
My name is Danny Dixon, been here in Long 41 years. I represent the Ball Lane. Ball Lanes live on the side of Carl Lake, the Ball Lanes live on that side of Carl Lake. That's what we've got. One of the things that we need to really discuss is this thing's been dragging on for a year and a half. It's very simple. Go by the plan that we worked so hard on for so long, there would be no problems. There wouldn't be no clustering in the houses. There would be no moving homes from one area to another area. The infrastructure should be put in place prior to any development starting. Just like Manatee County, Polk County, Pasco County. Go down here to Paris, the interstate, the roads are all, you got all the turn lanes, the red lights are all in place. And there is that one house coming up out of the ground here. They got their act together. Hillsborough County pisses so much money away. We're down here spending $1.7 million on 200 yards of sidewalk right next to the white line on 672. And if they ever do 4 lane, $1.7 million is going to be crumpled up and moved. Why did they put it where it belonged to begin with? It seems like we've got very little foresight of what's going on. Let's build the school, then put the sidewalks in place. No, the sidewalks should have been done when the school was built. The red lights, the turn lights, the subdivisions around it, you can't go anywhere. They don't have the proper turning lanes, they don't have the proper infrastructure set in place before you allow the developer to build. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Dixon. Buddy? Sorry.
Good morning. My name is Bill O'Brien. I was born down the road on Boyle Road almost 7 years ago. And I've seen this area change dramatically, not just long. Brandon, when the dirt roads are long, and Brandon, it's, what I've seen is a lack of planning, lack of foresight, lack of common sense, and a lack of real leaders within Hillsborough County for multiple years. I can remember. I've been active with the civic associations that founded back in the early 80s. I currently serve as vice president of the Palm Civic Association. I served as president for many years. What I want to see, or what I like to see, I think, is a representation of what not just I want to see, but what the citizens want. We recognize that development is going to come. We readily accept the fact that it needs to come here, but at the same time, we understand reality and we realize that eventually it will come this way. So as a group, we like to help mold what happens so that we can preserve a little bit of part of what long used to be. And I'll say used to be because it's not even what it used to be. It's already changed so much. But some of the things we've asked for or we've talked about, and we can't seem to get the message across the Hillsborough County Commission, the Planning Commission, the planners, the approvers. We'd like to see, I guess, conceptually, that there's a review conducted prior to that deems the area is ready for development. And when we say ready, we want to see transportation and infrastructure in place before, not after, development is approved. We want to see the infrastructure such as water, sewer, et cetera, that will accommodate the expansion. preserve some of the rural character of Long. And in order to do that, as development's going to occur, we have pressed, we have done everything, we stood up in front of the commission, in front of the planning commission, and we've tried optional standards that would be applied to the entire area that would restrict or regulate the growth going forward. And one of the primary objectives was not allow small lot sizes and the developments to occur or root to occur in our area. We specified nothing any smaller than a half acre. And the half acre delineation of the half acre designation is based on the physical size of the lots that can be developed that will track the wind. Not, I have 100 acres, 50 acres to develop a whole, because I have 100 acres, that means I have 200,000. That's what matters. We'd like to really see the preservation of larger lots if there is development, and the larger lots would allow agriculture. If the inhabitants of the fire. I guess I've said a lot, quit speaking, we've got a lot to do today. But those are the primary goals that we've had in place since we began this, and I'll make one last comment. We worked for months to develop a community. I believe we could have done it in a month, to 9 days. We worked in conjunction with Hillsborough County to try to make it occur. And there's just too much sand in that not very well oiled machine to make progress. It takes too long to get progress, to make forward progress. So our expectation for today is let's finally make some progress. Let's get something charted down that's a consensus of our community, and then let's move forward to make it happen through legislation, changes in the comprehensive plan, the land development code, and in our community plan. Thank you.
My name is Scott D. Smith. I'm here for landowner of 2 parcels in the RP-2. And I'm here to listen today. Everybody's got opinions about it. But, there was some work done in '93 after I bought my property, before I bought my property, that was laid out a certain way. And it looks like everybody's trying to change it around. I'm not sure if that's going to be right. So that's why I'm here to listen and see what you think.
God, I don't mind asking, are you in the south area or?
Yeah, I'm right down the road, off Grady Road with one property, and then off Long River Road, the other. 10 acre parcel of 20.
Excellent. Yes, sir.
My name is Stan Whitcomb. I don't own any property along. I entered the area 56 years ago. I go further west, Sun City Center. I was a developer since 76. Continued to develop medical field. The building is north of Public 301, which are now considered by the U.S. Post Office to be that's not true. I'm very concerned with trying to understand why I think that's the way some bureaucrat wants it. I've been involved in Hillsborough and Lee County, Collier County. Everyone has a new group out of town, out of office planners that decide they ought to change everything. Sun City Center was well designed. Look at the sewer plant. Way back. After we expanded it, so we had the infrastructure in the area. The only thing we didn't have, don't have to this day, sufficient road, successful. For other things, we were. We couldn't get rural world. Now they've got rural park, not rural. So I'm just here to listen. They come, I want to do the same thing in Lee County, where they have Caliber Group, right, with their, the rural. Everything over.
Thank you, Scott. I know this is tricky because it's room, and it's just strange being spread out like this, but if you can, feel like you're down there, go ahead and speak up, because I think folks on the Zoom can't hear what we're saying.
The microphone is actually in that thing, it looks like a football in the middle of the table right there, there's a camera in that, so if you speak, it wants to find you. So that folks who are at home watching this can see you and hear your words.
Clarence,
I'm Clarence James from the Ward, I'm part of the volunteer.
you want to introduce yourself?
My name is Jay Collins, I'm with the Planning Commission. Morning, everybody.
Hi, my name is Priya, I'm with the Planning Commission.
Okay, next we're going to go to folks on the Zoom call. I see Ron is your own screener. Go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Cami, you want to go first? Ladies first. Cami Corbett.
Sure. My name is Cami Corbett. I'm with the law firm of Hill, Ward and Henderson. I'm a land use lawyer. And I am specifically, I'm interested in what's happening in the bomb area of the RP-2, but I'm specifically listening and talking and participating because I'm concerned with what's in the northern part and the policies that relate to the northern part that are not in the bomb community plan. Thank you.
Simon, Bill.
I'm Simon Bolin. I'm the Agribusiness Development Manager for Hillsborough County Economic Development Department.
And a good one. Bill.
Yes, I'm Bill Stevens, and I'm just viewing on the call and everything. I have nothing to. This first time attending any meeting on this subject, so I can nothing to say. I have to educate myself on it.
I'm Ron Weaver with the Stearns Weaver Miller Law Firm. I'm also a land use lawyer, which means I practice civil law. The way I practice, it's been called criminal. And I grew up on a farm 8 miles from the nearest town. And I'm here to listen, and we do represent some landowners and some developers and all kinds of people in all walks of life. And we're very much interested in listening and already appreciate what all of you are saying, which is it's very helpful and very thoughtful.
Here we go. Let me figure out technology here. All right, so I'm flipping. There we go. Hello, technology these days, guys. Appreciate it again. We talked over this again, so I'm gonna go real quick. What we're here to do today is talk about the RP-2 area. We've already hit on this, the trade-offs. Bill, Buddy, I know you guys have those. And Mr. Dixon has set some points that we kind of gone through, and we've listed some of those here. We're really trying to come up with that balance. Like, how do we find a working solution? So today, I want to get really into the weeds on that. Don't notice again, this is the area we're looking at. The moratorium is in that kind of pink area that's shown here, and then the whole orange area is also yellow and pink. Really, what we got, as you know, the bottom community plan covers this purple dotted line, so that's not new at all. That's what we did several years ago. And what we're trying to focus on today are really the policies. You know, we're going to have another working, so we'll see how far we get today. This Mr. O'Brien, like you said, I'm hopeful we can get through a lot today, but we got another one coming too, so, let's get into it. So you guys have hit on this already quite a bit, and this is where we try to come up with everything you've heard, and you all know some of the things that have come up earlier. 250-foot buffer, half acre lots is something that has been talked about. Some have wanted to cluster development, some are really not in favor of that. We talked about keeping it rural and infrastructure feel, that's where we're coming from. Really just kind of showing the comments, obviously, I want to say that we're listening to the hearing, so how we come up with that, balance. That's where I want to get from.
Just a point of interest, I believe those comments are an incorporation of the community and the developers. Is that correct?
Correct, yep.
Making sure.
Yeah, so this came from the hearings in February, but we also tried to list, like I mentioned, I know you guys had several points that you listed out before. So.
Because there are several points on there that are obviously not, they're not important to us, they're important to the developers. And then obviously, there's got to be a compromise.
Yeah, thanks for making that distinction, because it's kind of, between these bubbles, it's kind of counter, 200 feet of buffers, yeah, good point. And then the flexibility of the buffers is something that we heard, where you could go shorter or smaller distances on the buffer. And then we heard the half acre lots, some feel that we can make half acre lots. So where do we come in on that? And
I'd like to say something.
it's very clear.
Why doesn't the county come up with, if it's 160 acre feet, all the way around your property, you will have 250-foot setback. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. I'm not letting them weasel out of that. Done, over. That's what we want to see.
So you're talking about the two, so I can hear you, 250-foot buffer around.
A big enough piece of property, not a small piece of property, it's gotta be big enough to support that.
Yeah.
But a small piece of property still needs to have some buffer. For water runoff or whatever. In the county, that their developers weasel out of it every time. I mean, we see it. We see it. When it's the there's the 250 foot next to the lake. That really don't. Where the 250 foot needs to be next to the other property owner's house. That would be great. I don't think it'll ever happen, but that would be really great. There's something else too. Let's talk about all these developments coming out there. The roads never get better. We don't have any new fire departments. We didn't get a new school with no sidewalks, but they're finally put that there. It seems like every time the developments come in, the county gets deeper and deeper and deeper in debt, and nothing gets done. Aren't we charging people enough money? Does it need to be $30,000 house? Tax, boom, from the developer to start, so the county can build roads? The county doesn't have any money. I don't know where it goes. They don't get enough, or I don't know. I'm not intelligent enough to know where it goes. But
I can tell you where.
it's not there. There you go.
They blow it on ELAC
Well, I
property,
understand.
they buy the land up. That's what it does.
But, you know, something needs to happen. Somebody needs to pay for it. The property owners that are out here, they've been out here for a long time, they've been paying tax every year. Our roads are crap. They got worse, it's not trucks still. And everybody's not over it. We'd like to see something done. Developers got to pay, or it's never gonna happen. You're not the bad guy, please.
Say that again?
I said, you're not the bad guy, you're the guy with the bad guy.
Yeah, we're just again, trying to come up with what that one solution, I know you all have. We're here today, so I want you to know, we listen to her, know where you're coming from, points of debate. So others will look at that and, you know, what is that now?
This is very serious. I mean, y'all don't really realize what's going on. With all the development, there's 40 trees fire through Wyoming, Ruston, Sunset, all up and down the Rio. Those people have an in place called infrastructure. We have no fire department. We have no sheriff. We have a post office. Because the post office addresses, the streets, the zip code, they changed everything. Tell me I live in Wyoming, long,
reports, you know, rates a lot here. How serious is it? I came home one day, found my wife laying on the sidewalk because they changed on my mom. They dispatched the fire truck out of my mom. I'm doing CPR on 27 minutes because they have to go out 674, load and track, up 301, back down 682. 27 minutes of doing CPR. Those 17 miles from my house, when Summerfield is 4 miles, but the amount of homes that they're designated to take there because the density in Wyoming, so they are sending fire trucks and everything down there. I lost my wife that day. Very tragic, because we have no infrastructure in here, in place before the development is allowed to be built. The infrastructure has to be built prior to allowing the developer to be out.
What are you saying? Is this horrible thing that happened now? It's gonna happen again. Because even when the houses are built, they still don't put a fire department in place. They still don't put a deputy station on it. It just doesn't happen.
I know we got a lot of discussion, I don't want to get carried away. Are there any, I didn't catch the introduction clearly at the end of the table, but are there any representatives from development here today?
Yes, sir.
Okay, which is good.
It sounds like some of the ladies attorneys as well, probably have representation.
Yeah, because I think, I don't know. In conducting, if you're conducting a business, and that's what this is, isn't it? This is a business in Hillsborough County. But if you're conducting business and you have issues and items and things that need to be resolved, then I believe you should sit down and try to work out and map a plan with the parties involved. And come up with a workable straw man, whatever you like to call it. That's an outline of where we're going and how we're going to get there. And this is what we agreed to do that we can all say is okay. And then there will be potential items that fall off the wayside that we have to negotiate further, et cetera. But I don't see that, I haven't seen that happen yet. And it's disappointing because it takes much too long to get progress. When, you know, you're discussing our needs and issues, and we are, and then we're separately discussing their needs and issues, when there's got to be a mechanism.
You're speaking to the choir, that's what we're doing.
There's got to be a mechanism that we get together and we decide, okay, we understand you need to make a profit. We understand you want to have development, but you need to understand you're moving into my neighborhood or my town, and you need to comply or, you know, work according to the standards and rules of life.
No, I completely agree, that's what we're trying to do.
Well, I guess, I just want to see, I'd like to see better representation from the big developers that you want to.
Yes, sir.
I'm not a big developer, but I sure have hits our county. I couldn't agree more with thoughts with respect to the agricultural nature of the area, and the fact that there's no infrastructure. But the question is just like we have the same problem countrywide, with east and west. Who's going to pay for it? How? In my case, just to give an example, I have medical building. So many people that are close to this medical facilities, not a hospital. But so anyway, but I was charged $1.1 million by the county, front end fees. And they were to finish the extension of 301, the widening of 301. And I paid it 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen. And that there is not, the reason why we're talking here, if somebody has a chance in Millbrook County, it's too late. They've already done, spent all the money, they've gone, but asked them all that. And to come down and say, well, now we're going to back you. I agree that we shouldn't have planned. I don't agree excited either way. Gentlemen.
It should be a guarantee plan, to guarantee what they're gonna spend it on.
I don't know what they're gonna spend it on.
But you know, if you pay for the road, it's like, it should be here's your check. Gotta go to the road.
Well, that's easy to say.
Yeah, well, I mean, and an example is, and I'm not gonna cut you off because I'd like to hear what you got to say, and I understand what you say. I'm not a big developer, I'm a really small guy. I mean, I have property and I sell it, and effectively that's development. But there's got to be a way to pull it all together and get people talking and communicating, and come up with what are the new standards and what are the standards. And, you know, the Hillsborough County voters voted in this transportation tax a couple of years ago. And it's like, I couldn't, you know, that's an example of what you're saying. It's like, why would you vote and approve the tax when you have no idea what the plan is to use the money? Why would you do that? I would never, if somebody puts together a good plan and it's outlined, it's specific, and it says every dollar was raised, this is what it's going to, I'm okay with it if it's a good plan. But just to vote in and charge the developer $1.1 million because it's in the tax code is ridiculous, because you need to know that it's going to the right thing. And, you know, 301 is a perfect example. How many years? My son worked, I worked for Tampa Electric for 31 years, and my son worked for Tampa Electric, and we were driving down 301 the other day. 13 years ago, they moved the telephone poles on US 301 to widen 301 13 years ago. And now, yeah, they moved the poles, he said, and they still haven't finished this road.
For example, Fish Hall, 2002, paid for the 4 lanes of Bell Shoals and Lithia Pine Crest. In 2002, Bell Shoals being 4 lane today, they're not even starting on Lithia Pine Crest, and they paid from Bloomingdale all the way to the river.
And that just falls right back to my point that I've been trying to drive down and to these folks all along. We're not against development when it's planned. We're against competing approvals of development for an area that's not ready to facilitate that development. It's that simple.
It seems like the county is very reactionary. They wait till they get it. They have to do something. It's been like that since I've been alive, especially in Hillsborough County. They took us a gun to their head. Then they get busy. Then they hate to pass it. They sit there and go, okay, let's do that. We're so far behind. What was me? It seems like we're here to compromise though. That development down the street, Amber Sweet, 1 acre lots. That's rural. It isn't a big bunch of row houses. That seems like a nice compromise to me. Somebody had a piece of land and they had the freedom to develop it. Of course, you have standards. You have standards you have to go by. But why wouldn't you let people do that? That would keep it rural. That seems like a compromise.
1 acre lots, right?
Yeah, they're roughly 1 acre lots.
Yeah, it seems like all you all mentioned, that's the kind of development, right?
Perfect example, Amber Sweet, right next to
That's
the
right.
stop.
That's right.
Amber Sweet subdivision, beautiful homes, beautiful lots, open spaces.
Yeah.
Super. Nothing
There's
wrong.
no bypass, no crap like that.
Yeah.
But you know, they got a small developer shouldn't have to worry about that kind of stuff. Just do us internal roads and put up some lots.
There's another example that's beginning to get put in place right there on New Creek Road. They're 1 acre lots and they're nice homes.
This gentleman right here that built this beautiful commercial building and give the county a hell of a bunch of money. And they spend it someplace else, this is what falls out. Who's better there?
So, I mean, to your point, though, I think you just articulated what we need to do, spot on what we're talking about, what we're trying to do is have all the different developers, the community, let's put a strong there, what's the workable solution, what can we not compromise on? You know, you just hit on the 1 acre lots, that's something that's come up quite a bit, so I'd love to hear, and I don't know if Andy or anybody else on the Zoom can hear us, and Scott as well. I just want to talk a little bit, Stan, you know, screwing up things on I should have done a big name tag or something. Sustain, I don't know if you weigh in on this too, or if Candy Balls has some good thoughts, but that's something where we can talk to the county as well. What I'm hearing is half-acre lots, 1-acre lots would like, to spread that around this entire couple thousand acres that's left. Some don't like that either. So that's where we've been trying to come up with a balance where you allow half-acre, 1-acre lots, and then if you are gonna do small lots, I know you all talked about 40-foot lot widths, they don't fit, they don't work with what we have out here. If you're gonna do them, you put them inside of the development, I know that y'all probably won't like that. But anyway, I'm rambling on, I just want to hear from the development perspective, what
Sure.
y'all think.
I'd be happy to share a couple of thoughts on behalf of the development community, property owners, and developers. Couple of things. First, as far as infrastructure and making sure the infrastructure comes either concurrent with the development or at the same time, but either before or at the same time of development. I think last time we were together, we talked about the fact that the county used to allow the developers to go ahead and make the improvements to the roadways as they were developing. And so they would make improvements over and above what they would be required to build for their development. So the whole road segment would get done at once and it would be there beforehand. And then the developer would then get impact fee credits for the extra amount that they built. Well, the county has taken the ability to do that away. They are no longer allowing us to do that unless the roadway is on a specific county plan, and the county does not have any plans outside the urban service area to do any capital improvements. Those that were planned were removed from the board, and if those improvements aren't on a plan, then the developer can't get reimbursed for the extra improvements that they wouldn't otherwise be able to or be required to make. So it's it's frustrating for the developers as well, because for the communities, they want, to benefit the subdivisions that are being built, they want a good transportation network system to those subdivisions as well. And then just on the point of compromise, one of the things that I was hoping from a compromise personally from representing people who own property in the northern area was that the northern area be treated differently than the BOM area. And if the BOM area wanted to be restricted to the half-acre lots or 1-acre lots, I completely understand that. That northern portion is more like an extension of Fishhawk. There aren't that many properties left. It seems silly to try to come up with a whole new planning regime for the northern part that's different, that's drastically different than what's in place today. But in BOM, it makes a lot of sense. Those are my thoughts.
Yeah, thanks, Kim. That's definitely something starting to use as they can hear me come to. That's something we definitely talked about with the layout in the policy plan. 6 applications in line to, it's kind of permanent with those intersections. So that's a little vague right now, right? That's policy creative plan. Kenny, well, we got you. Can you respond to, I want to hear what your thoughts are on what Bill just talked about. How do we come up with this workable solution? Identify those things that we can agree on, things that we cannot agree on.
I'm sorry, I have a little trouble hearing audio. So were you asking me something?
I'm just asking your thoughts on what Bill just. I'm just trying to get your thoughts on what Bill was just talking about, throwing the straw man out there. What are some of the things that we can agree on? And then you talked about half-acre lots. What are some of the things you feel like we can't agree on? Talk more about. Can you hear me okay?
Well, I guess from my perspective, I think, like I said, what I'm thinking is that, some of what's being talked about for BOM, I don't think is appropriate for the northern area. And I would like to see if we could get some consensus on that piece. I don't know if that's possible today. And I apologize for not being there in person this morning. I was concerned about the restrictions on number of people in the room, and I didn't want to take a seat from someone who actually lived in the community. And so I figured I would try to just participate remotely, but it does make it tough. But that is that's one area. I think that this is a community plan, and I think that development interests should have some input into it. I think from a practical perspective, to talk about what's fair and what's legal for the county to allow and to require, and how to balance, sort of what's fair and what's legal in terms of making a developer of a subdivision do or pay versus what's, good for the community and how much should the county be pitching in. I think we could probably reach some consensus that the county should include CIP projects outside the urban service boundary to improve the roadways in this area, as they always have. They just raised the impact fees in the rural area to well over $13,000 a home for mobility for roadways. They're the highest in the county, and there's not a single roadway that's planned to apply those funds to. So you're going to have all of Hawkstone being built out, all of it. 1,000 units of Hawkstone paying at least $13,000 a home, and not a single improvement's going to be made. There's not one planned. I mean, that's certainly something that the community should be looking to. The Hillsborough, that's on the Board of County Commissioners. The Board of County Commissioners set the funding priorities. I mean, if they don't spend it, it just goes back to the developer, because the ordinance requires it to be refunded to the developer. If they don't spend it in 10 years, it has to go back to the developer. That makes no sense to us. And I will tell you, my developer client that developed Hawkstone actively tried to get the county to do an improvement or allow him to do an improvement. And it was not, we were basically told that wasn't supportable.
Have any of the county commissioners come to any of these meetings just yet? I think one may have sent a representative to one of the last 4 meetings. Does that ring a bell to anyone else? The reason I mention it is this. I think that there are 4 things that Cammie has previewed 2 of. Number 1 is, in addition to the problem that if you want to build a $10 million road and you only have to pay impact fees of $5 million, Cammie's absolutely right. We used to be able to go ahead and build a $10 million road and get $5 million worth of impact fee credits that we could use or sell to another developer and get on with our lives for 30 years. Unfortunately, as Cammie said, that has changed. And it's ironic that it's changed in a way where the commissioners think they're doing you guys a favor, and they're doing you a very great disfavor, a very great disservice. Second thing is, there's a similar problem with the impact fee alternative satisfaction agreement, which is a sister provision, which says that if you want to pay your impact fees with pavement in the right place to serve you, and some of it also ends up serving the public, that you have to enter into a very time-consuming, expensive, get a lawyer, and go through an alternative satisfaction agreement, which means you pay your impact fee in pavement. But they've made that so bureaucratically difficult and time-consuming and expensive that it should be expedited and sped up as a sister of ways to get back to some things. Number 3 is, Cammie alluded to the impact fee magnitude, like 13 grand per house for roads alone. In the last 4 weeks, the county of Hillsborough has increased its impact fees in 3 ways. Number 1, it went from 55% of par for parks up to 100% a couple of years early, which means they're rapidly escalating the park fee. And the same with respect to the road fee. The road fee that was mentioned as 13 grand by Cammie, that road fee also has just increased to 100% of par rather than 80% of par, which of course is the 20% increase, which is tens of millions of dollars that's being charged a year or 2 before it was supposed to be by a deal worked out 3 years ago for a 5-year ramp up. So the nature of funding of these subjects has indeed been escalated by the county commission. Unfortunately, Supreme Court threw out the sales tax that could have helped everybody. Supreme Court threw it out, so we're not going to get that Finney sales tax into roads, but we are going to get it back on the ballot, hopefully in 2022, and hopefully you work on that so we can get the money back in a 2022 ballot. And thank you for letting Cammie and me speak to some of the things that we need to do together. And thank you for reaching out for these kind of compromises on how and who funds what to get the infrastructure.
Ron, thanks for that. We're trying, probably pick it up.
We have no idea.
Ron, can you hear me okay?
It's not that it's loud.
Yes, it sounds
I think that some of them rough on paper or whatever they're at, and it's.
Yeah, we're picking up a lot of paper kind of sound. We'll try to get that worked out. But what I understood Ron was saying is talking a little bit about the.
Was this a county person? Who was this?
That was Ron Weaver. He's a certain.
One suggestion for those on Zoom would be keep your microphones on mute unless you're talking. That would also probably help.
And we moved the speaker close to everyone. So thanks for the patience.
Can you ask for an audio check from someone on Zoom, please?
Ron, can you speak on, I want to see if this is any better on our end.
I'm sorry, were you speaking to me? I'm sorry, excuse me.
This is Jared. I was just trying to see if you could say a few more words and we'll see if we can get it better.
I can't hear you through your mask. I apologize. Someone repeat that. I'm sorry. I apologize.
A little bit, I mean, louder, but still.
It's maybe it's on his end.
Right. Technology.
Can you summarize what Ron is saying?
What I understood Ron saying, clearing through close. He's talking about the mobility fee and portion of fair share. He used to be able to pay a portion.
No.
Well, I respect that. I respect that, because if I'm a developer and I have to pay the fee, again, I don't going to do something useful to improve the development, the area, et cetera, you know, that's what it should be. So the homeowner pays the fee. The first point of action maybe is, you know, the application of fees and the utilization of such fees needs to be reviewed, and it needs to be, I hate to say regulated, because I hate the word. It needs to be regulated. It does need to be regulated.
Agreed, is reflected, but not spent on what we think it should be spent.
Sure, and a couple of those fees, now, you're right, widening the road, something to that effect. Widening roads, new roads, turning lanes, bicycle and pedestrian facilities, crosswalks, there's a variety of different things that those fees are used for. It's not just your automobile, it's also so that you can get around walking in your community, biking in your community, so that children can get around safe in your community. One of the things that is interesting is we had a lot of conversations with the county attorney's office on all of this. The fees that are paid across the street right there cannot be used inside the urban service boundary along US 301 unless there is an act of the VOCC to do that, and vice versa. Also, what Cammy and Ron were talking about with the idea of the developer paying for an entire project and then they receiving credit for it, they are correct. That has to be in the county's capital improvements program for that to occur.
Or it can be brought in.
Yeah, or it can be brought in, which again is an act of the VOCC to do that. That is something that we are asking in this planning process for consideration. So that when you do have development that comes across the street here, if that developer should say, I'll pay $50 million and have all of that fixed, and then you'll give me $48 million back, because all I have is a $2 million impact fee. But for them to widen the entire road, they believe will be beneficial to them being able to have a better product in the end. That is part of doing business, is being able to say you've got a good or better product than the guy down the road. So if you can leverage capital, which in that case is exactly what you're doing, by spending that capital and then having it brought back to you by the government, then you might actually do those type of improvements. But again, those type of improvements must be on that capital improvement program, and they must be something the Board of County Commissioners has to put on it, because as Cammy and Ron said, none of that exists in the rural service area, because they have had basically a idea of planning the rural service area and the urban service area are on two different levels. And I think we all agree that that is something that needs to change, because you do need to have better planning out here, and certain types of infrastructure need to be put out here, whereas today they say, no, we're not going to put that out there. All of you guys talked about the schools, the fire stations, police stations, libraries. These are all things in which the developer is to contribute when they develop out here in the RP-2, whether it is an impact fee or it is land. So that is one of the things I think, Jared, we would like to have a conversation about, is exactly that idea of what types of things do you see this community having? So we know that we want EMS services. We all want EMS services. But what about the parks facilities? What about libraries? Are these other types of things that you would want to see in these communities out here? Because on the back page of that handout is basically a trade-off, where we have to have that conversation of saying, what are some of the things that you would like to have in these communities? Because if you do have these larger lots, then you're going to start losing some of those other benefits, because those larger lots might eat into that land that is dedicated by the developer. Mr. Dixon, I see your hand. So I just want to make sure that we get around to having that conversation. We need to say, what do you guys envision across the street? And I know number one is, I know it is infrastructure. The infrastructure is brought up. You don't build a house before you have that infrastructure. But what about the houses? What about the communities? Besides the large lots, what else are these people coming out here for? Besides that rural atmosphere. So I'll leave it at that, and Mr. Dixon, you have to pick it up.
You're saying in the urban service area, this is doing this over there. Where is, that's why we're here, to keep us from becoming bad over there, or what you just talked about is not been done, not being done. That's why we're here today, to keep us from getting in that mess that you created over there. There is no red lights, there is no turn lanes, there is no infrastructure already where you allow the developers to be. That's why I'm here. To keep this from happening. Rodine Road and Long River Road. Let's put the red light up, subdivision, rather than four-way stop.
you got 2 miles of traffic every day. Nothing's ever been done there. Nothing's been done here. Big Ben, look at Big Ben, what a mess. 4 miles to interstate, an hour and 45 minutes to get on interstate in the morning.
Yeah.
You haven't done your job up there. That's why we're here, to keep from causing this mess here.
Amen to that.
So I like that, I do, I really like that. So let's take it one step further. What if everything that you needs to occur along 301, Big Bend, Road D, 672, 674, all of those improvements have occurred? I know it may be a fantasy, but let's play it out. Then what happens here? What happens in these communities out here? If those communities down there have actually had everything built for the type of infrastructure that is needed, then what type of community is here?
Lots of infrastructure, stop signs, turn lanes.
Roads.
Yeah.
That's mainly what we want, roads.
And the answer, I guess the big picture answer is, in my view, we would experience an improved quality of life. Because over the past 20 years, my quality of life has degraded probably 100% below what it used to be. Because nothing is simple. I used to work at Big Bend Power Station, and I could drive from my house, which is on Carl Lake Road, to Big Bend Power Station in 10 minutes. That's an hour plus today, and that's not at rush hour. That's not an improved quality of life. And that's what, if those infrastructure, if those improvements had been conducted, and they still need to be done, if they were done, then we could get back and forth, and you probably would be hearing all the whining and complaining that you're hearing from this community. Because it wouldn't have been a historical fact, but it is a historical fact. There's been a disaster occurred in all of Hillsborough County. If you go down, you can start even at Sun City. Sun City, 674, Big Bend, Brody, and all the roads that we talked about. We could go on for days about all these issues. They haven't done those things. If they had done some improvements, then we wouldn't be complaining. We wouldn't be fearing this development coming in.
I can try to just for a real quick second that. So what I'm hearing, and I think I want to try to separate some part of the conversation, because I think what's really important is where we are today and where we're going to get to next. And I think that and rightfully so, it's been bundled together. There is a certain amount of infrastructure that has not been improved, that needs to be improved, right?
Yeah.
Big Bend's a good example. I do know Big Bend is on a list. They've got funding for it. That's good. And then that's going to take, even with the funding, it's going to take years to get done.
And it's,
right?
It's like 10% of what needs to be done.
Right. So my point being is, as we're talking through this, I want us, because I think I'm also thinking about what we're trying to accomplish as part of this effort, right? And so I would love for us to identify, which I think we know, but have this conversation where identify what is alcohol deficiency, right? Because there's a portion of the improvement 674, 672, Big Bend, those are things that are deficient. There is an issue because, and this is not a surprise, Hillsborough County has had a lack of funding for infrastructure. If you look at the capital improvements plan, which is why we've developed a series of plans that really look at investing in it, and it really is for the whole county. And I think Jake's point is, in the rural area, there may not be projects in part because they're trying to focus development in the urban service area, right? So that was a policy decision of, rather than having all the development go into the rural area, let's focus on it. So we are efficient. And so you mentioned it earlier, that surtax You know, unfortunately, collective dollars, we don't know if it's gonna be spent now on infrastructure or not, or it's gonna be prepaid or all this stuff. And that's the predicament that we're in. So I think it's important to think about, understand that. Rightfully so, you're frustrated about it, we're all frustrated about it. But then I think it's also important for our effort is, it's being tied to this land use study, right? So, you know, again, I'm not saying put in a parking lot, but understand these are the deficiencies. But then also thinking forward is, coming a little bit to Jay's point, is what is needed and what is acceptable for the level of development that's going to be here in the future. There are already properties that are approved. Honestly, it's gonna make the situation worse. A lot more people moving in, you're just gonna, right? So I'm not saying to ignore it, but let's say, understand that situation. And as part of this study, what's important is we need to identify the level of development, those policies that are acceptable. You know, it was interesting that Tammy, as you mentioned it, you know, there's a difference between the north and the south part of RP-2. That is a question I think that this group needs to, you know, talk through. You know, understanding whether or not, you know, in terms of the investments, if there are targeted investments, you know, impact fees, you know, is there a direction to some of these improvements? Obviously, you know, from the developer side, they would love, not love, but they have typically improved these roads, right? Not looking back in terms of everything I'm missing, and get credits for it. So I think we need to start thinking and talking through those issues. And I think a big part of it, and as I was working with the team and we're thinking about it, is, and kind of go back to the beginning when we're talking about buffers and things like that, you know, that density looking forward is going to be important, right? If they're, you know, whether they're acre lots or 2 acre lots or half acre lots. And the other thing that I kind of asked was, there is a difference between a really large parcel, right, 160 plus acres, or if you look at it, you know, a lot of the remaining parcels, developable parcels in RP-2 are, I would say, below 50 acres.
There's only two that's available.
There's only two that.
It's a village plan. I don't know what developer will be 25 of those 15, 20, 25 acres. One developer owns all that 600 and some acres that were already that they want to. So it looks like, you know, there's only 15, 20, but it's the same guy that owns it all.
Right.
Under 15 different LLCs.
And I'll fall back to my point earlier, and you know, we can whine and moan, complain and groan and not make any progress. The solution, I believe, is, let's say, you know, Danny's point, one developer has most of that right now. Let's get down and sit down at the table with those people under, you know, a truth flag, and let's come up with what's acceptable as a group, as a Eisenhower.
You're talking about.
I believe
This is the one the commission turned down for the development.
Hawkstone, just to clarify, Hawkstone is being developed by Homes by West Bay, and those approvals are all in place. I did have a rezoning in that area that was on behalf of Mattamy Homes that was turned down by the commission. And those are in the north area, but the vast majority of the north area is owned and controlled or controlled by Homes by West Bay. And then Eisenhower, both Ron's firm and my firm represent Eisenhower. Ron does the bulk of Eisenhower's representation. Their firm does the bulk of it, but I do some of it as well. And those are the properties that are located in the Baum area. He's Mr. And then I don't want to speak out of turn, Ron, since he's really more your client, but Eisenhower has the specific Baum East and Baum Grove East and Baum Grove West.
catching parts of
Yeah,
it.
I think we're picking up half of that.
And we're getting, well, I think what she said.
I'll
is-
type it in. I'll type my comments in the chat so you guys can, if you can get it to him. But go ahead, buddy. I think you know what I'm talking about.
So there are multiple developers that we're talking about.
Yeah.
That's fine.
That's interesting.
And that's probably more appropriate anyway, because you've got a diversity of input to, the planning process. Again, we started this process, we worked with the county and we really helped try to press the stock get this RP-2 moratorium in place. It was done. It's been a year and a half. Progress has been little to none relative to what our objectives were, in my opinion. Very little. We haven't made any progress on regulation, on any of the, comprehensive plan, the land development code changes, nothing. We haven't got anything put on paper. So again, we should put together, an agenda and have that discussion that talks about what's acceptable to the community, what's acceptable to the vote, and then come up with an amended plan based on those discussions that what's acceptable for all, and then go forward and make the necessary changes to mandate that the development in the future follows that guidance.
We don't want this area to end up like what Eisenhower just did down the road, south. You go into South, what? They've got little bitty lots, little bitty things. Every home has got at least 4 or 5 cars. They're parked in the street. It impairs emergency vehicles to get around. They built a nice little park like they're on South on Clarence Drive, but they put no parking for the park, so the people park in the road. They're squeezed together in row houses. There's no easy way to get around through it. Even the roads they put in, brand new subdivision are already falling apart. The county hasn't done their job on making sure the roads were placed properly. You can't drink a cup of water right down Clarence Drive with so many holes in it already. What is it, 3 years? But do not allow bomb area to happen what you allow in these other areas in South County.
What Danny was talking about there, that place he's talking about, their quality of living is worse than ours, believe it or not, it's damn brand new almost. Talking about quality of living. Everybody in this room that lives out here, quality of living is really going downhill. The only quality of living that's gone up is the developer. And if he's gonna develop it out here, we want all of it to go up together. We want to be better off, not worse, and we're only gonna get worse.
So you're, I'm gonna go back to what you said, and that's what we're trying to figure out, so.
Large lots and buffer areas are 2 major things. If we can't figure that out, we'll waste our time.
Yeah, so that's where we need to get.
So the good developer, he's gonna charge more money for the lot, like, he's not gonna lose money, don't believe that.
I don't know how this credit thing got started, so you buy 100 acres and you get credit because 25 acres is small, and then you're allowed to tighten your density up and move these houses down. That should not even be allowed. That's totally insane to tell someone, if you're gonna buy a piece of property, you need to look at the piece of property and figure out what it's got. If you want to buy 20 acres of small land, 100 acres, that's up to you. It's now going to be wetlands, a place for waterfowl, animals, and everything like that. No, it should be against law for you to take, well, I could put 20 houses over there. No, you could. God didn't make it that way. You can't build real small. He should be allowed to move them over here.
It qualifies, one of the things we talked about is the open space. And, when you've got the swamp, then you've got the opportunity to classify the wetland or whatever as part of that open space. If you have a desire and you know what it is you're trying to do, the way to do it, you just got to set your mind to it, that you're going to get it done. And time to get it done.
I think, we can pull this map, but I'm hearing, and I know this, like you're talking about this for a year, it gets down to, I want to start breaking this up a bit in chunks. I just, like, you started talking about this. Let's identify what we're talking about for infrastructure, specifically where we've already got some of that. Then the way we split this up today, from the land use, the land, the density, development, let's talk about that. I want to dive it out right now. Jim, you mentioned the half acre lots. So that's where I want to go.
I want to clarify the half acre lots. The half acre lots is, I believe, a really significant compromise for the people of Long. You know, in our original concept that we put together put down on paper and communicated to you guys and the county, and, you know, we identified that we wanted large lots, and then we said not less than a half acre in physical size for each lot. But what we also said was we'd like to find a mechanism to incentivize larger lots. So I don't want to let that fall to the wayside and become a non-point or a non-issue, because the larger the lots, the Amber Street subdivision that we keep, representing as a good example.
Half acre.
At least that. But if there's more land, then there's an opportunity potentially to have more, or maybe in the inverse of that, if you've only got 10 acres, for instance, maybe you make 1 acre lots out of 10 acre tract. And if you got 160 acres, I don't know, just whatever. But
And if they're willing to do bigger than half acre lots, I know they're talking about, well, we're eating up open space. But if they're like, if they want to do half acre lots, then maybe you can say, if you do an acre lot, then 50% of that can count as your open space. If you just don't bulldoze it or whatever. So that way, there's not just that 40% of open space.
yeah, or a percentage of it could qualify as open space. That's the concept,
Oh, yeah, sorry. I missed what you're saying. Please state that.
Well, we talked about half acre lots or bigger. So when we talk about 1 acre lots or 2 acre lots, the developers are saying, well, we can't do that and have our 40% open space and get enough houses in there to make it worth our while. Okay, and I can understand that, but if they agree to go 1 acre lot or something, then maybe a half acre of that 1 acre lot can be counted as open space if they keep it natural.
I guess that goes back to Bill. This is good, because I think what we have proposed right now is going to have 40%, and we're going to get more of the weeds in the next one. This is good. So is it incentivizing?
It's a mechanism to incentivize a larger lot. It's a simple concept, but I don't know why it's so difficult to communicate. And again, we can put this in writing and, in a concept paper back on the very onset of this.
40 years ago. 40 years ago.
Well, it was then too, but I'm saying when we started the RP-2 review process, I worked in the community work that we agreed on the concept paper, and we communicated that concept. And it was like a page and a half, a page or a page. It's not like it's really difficult to understand.
I got it right here.
I'm from the South, and I'm like slow.
Back in Amber Street, there are no cars parked on the road. Sun City Center is a perfect example. Sun City Center is laid out in the woods because you can ride to Sun City all the way to Sun City. You don't have to see inside between cars going through Sun City. Look at Sun City. I'll do that.
Mr. Mason, is Amber Street well and septic?
Yes.
Well and septic?
I think it is, yes.
Yes.
I know it.
Would you guys be concerned if the developer said that they want to do 3-quarter acre lots on 160 acres and put in well and septic everywhere?
I'm not gonna say no, from my perspective, I'm saying it's one of the concepts that is worthwhile to investigate, find out the real impact, and then make a determination based on, give me the facts, and then we'll make them, I think. And the developer should do the same thing. And the county,
Everything over there, beautiful, 2 acre lots is all well and septic. I've lived on well and septic all my life. At least we won't be running out of water if I have it on the well. Where the county restriction. Okay. And I always have to worry about the sewage bills in Tampa Bay because the old infrastructure you have there, and 13 sewage spills that went out in Tampa Bay, because God takes care of everything but filters through the earth.
Now, I understand that. I only bring it up because one of the tenets of the category today is you have that base acreage of 1 unit for 5 acres. And if you wish to try to develop 2 units to the acre, there's some hoops to jump through. One of those hoops to jump through is you have to hook up the well, or excuse me, the water and sewer, and the developer must bring that line to their property. So currently, the way it is envisioned, the way the policy has been thought over the years, anything above that 1 to 5, you have to bring the water and sewer out there.
I disagree with you because I'm doing it right now.
On RP-2,
Right on Brady Road, I'm putting a house on 2 acres of land, and I'm putting down a well and a septic tank.
okay, all right, so I'll have to look at that then. I would be interested in finding out what would be our split.
It's called the family dwelling.
Another, when you're talking about what,
Yeah, family homestead.
Oh, your homes, yeah, no, that's, yes, sir, totally separate thing than subdividing out multiple lots like the gentleman who owns the property. Yes, sir.
when you're talking about what are some of the alternatives, that's potentially one of the alternatives. I have a place over in Polk County on a lake over there, and I've got about a half acre, a little bit more than a half acre lot, and I'm on a community water system. It's an option. You build one well, it's larger. You have a certified water treatment operator that operates, so the whole subdivision, for instance, could have a water system. And that's one well, and then you've got verification that the water that's being delivered to all of the homes is, suitable for potable use, et cetera. And it works.
Billy's so right on that because we are already doing that for our H2A hill. Dean Ball, Jay Sizemore down here, they have an 8-inch well, they have all the stuff sitting there. They provide water and sewage for, I think we've got 800 migrants. They come in on H2A and they stay there. We house them, we provide water sewage, we transportation for them. That, I don't know why all these people got into the concept that we have to have illegals come in and pick our stuff up, because we contract to Mexico, bring these 800 people in. Sam Aston does the same thing. Frank Hill, they all bring them in, take care of them, provide everything. So we got 800 people over here and right down here on 672, right before the university, and we have our own water and sewage treatment plant. And it's overseen by the county.
I think one of the, Jay, I don't know if the words you're not going to get into was, what is that trade-off if you, I mean, you talk about, I think it's Eisenhower, Candy mentioned this too, there is a blend of developers, Matthew homes, so it's like homes by West Bay, so anyway, Candy's got some of them up here, but if you were to take those 6, 7, 10, 20 acre lots, go over 160 acres or whatever, combine that plan villages, I think what Jay, again, don't put words in your mouth, what we're hearing is if you do the half acre lots, and then some of it you have the buffer, and then you have wetlands, and you don't get the density credit, you're not gonna get a developer to build the infrastructure the way you want. So that's just, I think, they went for it.
They go somewhere else.
Yeah, that was part of it, it's just trying to understand the difference between what would be acceptable.
Well, you're right on target, but whenever you have a problem, you come up with the potential solutions, you evaluate each one of those solutions, and then you come up with a reasonable outcome that is based on that due diligence process, what's the best solution? So, is it regular sewer water? Is it community water? Is it well and septic individually? And it can be mandated or dictated by size of lots, et cetera. But it may be, from a developer's perspective, it may be a reasonable outcome, or that they can just roll into the cost of the home or whatever. It's become a win-win. I don't know that it's the right solution. resolution. I'm not saying I'm in favor of it, I'm saying it should be looked at and evaluated and determined if it is.
It looks like Andy's got some other comments here too about the, so this is an increase, mobility fees 14,000 per home on average. It was much smaller than that in the past. And then there's, what else I should say, well, there's some jurisdictions are spending money on sidewalks, it seems that in the rural area, sidewalks are not an adequate placement for roads, so that's what we were talking about before. I'm just skimming over what you put here. Homes by West Bay is developed in Poxton, which has all of its approvals. Madison Homes has a recent rezoning in the northern area that was denied. Eisenhower also owns or controls a lot of the property in both RP-2 North and Long, you all know that. Some of the approvals, some south. County recently negotiated specific roadway improvements that are tied to the development of the Baum subdivision. And then Bill wrote, I am running Bill Stevens, a short story for a Facebook page, you for reception. Oh, looks like it's already answered his question with the developers have been represented. Candy and Ron are on the call, so they have been part of it. Anyway, just wanted you guys to be able to see that here. Some of what's happening in chat, but that's tiny.
So it seems like some of the problem still comes down to the county commission not allowing the developers to pay for infrastructure and do some of the problems or help us out. So it seems like until we get, and my understanding is that the Starter Boulevard up to over 75, there's no passes over there. That the developers had the money and was willing to put the pay for the overpass, the off-ramps there, but the county or the state said no. And they can't do, on 19th Street, they can't put off-ramps there because FDOT says it's too close to 674. Sometimes you gotta go to this annual out and use common sense. If you was to put off-ramps on those two roads from 75, you would eliminate half or 3/4 of the problems on Big Bend and wouldn't have to dump $500 million there.
I agree 100%.
And see, DOT told us that they couldn't do it because 674 and 672 were too close. Well, what the heck's in Plant City when you got an Otis Road 39 and Park Street that are a half mile apart with on and off ramps? If they can do it there, they can do it here. That's a bunch of BS.
If we brought that up to the DOT, and I think it just went right over the head. It's, I think it's because there's some determination that the area is still classified as rural, and because of that, DOT looks at it under a different microscope and determines that because it's classified as rural, that you can't have the exits or entrances any further, any closer than a certain distance, and I think it's 2 miles. I don't even remember what it is. It's a ridiculous thing, but it's, and then just to kind of, and then I'll be quiet, I promise. We focused that concept back on the county a year and a half. Because the development is occurring in Hillsborough County. Interstate 75 is traveling right through the center of Hillsborough County. They own the property, technically, that interstate is going through. So why are they mandating laws or rules governed by the state that need to be changed? Why is the county not aggressively pursuing, as a county, as an influential input to the state, and telling the state, listen, we can't fix the congestion problem because your guidance, your rules don't allow these entrances and exits to be applied. That's not new news. I told Hillsborough County specifically that, and I told that to the DOT when they had a meeting over there about the grant plans to expand Big Bend Road. And, it's like everything goes on down here.
Part of that is because of federal.
And may I speak briefly to that, because I've noticed over the years that the Q Cover House got an extra ramp in a few minutes on Himes to get into the Tampa Stadium, that ramp on the Himes. But by what you just mentioned, meaning, you need to expedite those 2 and 3 year interchange distance exception reports with the feds by using your Congress folks and your county commissioners to basically expedite those kinds of ramps the way Hugh Culverhouse did to get the Ramblin' Himes to his Tampa Stadium.
Can't hear you, Ron, I can't hear you well.
If you could just type it in. Can't hear you guys.
Or try speaking slow. I mean, I'm sorry.
We're saying maybe talk slower. It's just the acoustics in here too. I think it's part of the issue.
That's slow.
Ron, can you try to restate what you just said or type it in the chat?
I was just mentioning that there's 4 or 5 examples of where people have expedited these interchange distancing reports that issue. And you basically need to lobby to have the interchange distance reports to make exceptions, known as the urban rule instead of the rural rule, because you guys got it right, which is basically what you need to do is to have the lobbying to get the right designation for the right separation of those ramps as a nice focus, to deal with these problems. I like the way you guys are thinking about figuring out ways to get exceptions to the distancing from the feds, the way a number of people have over the years. And I cited the example of Hugh Culverhouse getting the Himes ramp near the Dale Mabry ramp for his Tampa Stadium. There are exceptions made if you make your case.
So what Ron basically said, the short of it, compressing it, is that yes, lobbying to get the designation change for the spacing, because there are standards. DOT does have standards based on whatever classification and location. So, and there are exceptions, but you have to go through the whole process. And to change, to be able to go through an exception with DOT, there is a long process and it takes time. So that's 20 years. Well, I mean, everything has a different process for an exception, right? And so it's really trying to work with that process.
But like Bill was talking, all the stuff off on ramps and everything that should be there that aren't there. And then I think of how planning was there, and planning was, if you're gonna build a subdivision, this subdivision next to this one, and the roads all that, everything flows smoothly. And then we have this place down here on 19th Street that goes to a dead end, lacking 50 feet being connected to Westlake, because the developer and the people showed up before the general meeting and we didn't know anything about it. So they stopped 19th Street from being connected to Westlake. Wait a minute, we have an elementary school there. The elementary school now has to.
Where's this? Sorry, you lost the word.
Here, mom.
The 19th Street extension was supposed to be connected to Westlake.
Okay.
So now the school buses have to go to stop signs and get out rather than a red light. Because they did.
A little bit and talk about, I feel like infrastructure is one thing we all. So one of the things we talked about was creating this plan, and Clarence mentioned several plans. There's nothing, Canada mentioned too, there's nothing outside of this urban service area. So, and now we do have some roads right across the street. So I've heard this before, but I want to bring it back up. Maybe it's looking at this now, and it's in your packet too, but what needs to be improved first? Anything else happens? The counties to go do something right now. And I've heard 672, that's something, I just want to know, we've heard this since last year. What's kind of the top priority? If somebody's going to lay out a plan right now.
672. When we voted on, let's see, 39 years ago, the Shore County does. When we had a big need for the preferable land, liner, no sinkholes, whatever happened, 672, when we had that meeting with the county commissioners and everything, they said that we allowed the dump to be put there. It was only going to be there 25 years. They were going to 4-lane 672 and 39, and that was 39 years ago.
You want 4 lanes and 672?
Yes.
I think it's appropriate. There was a semi truck just 2 days ago, and I started to take a picture of it. It stopped or stalled, broke down on State Road, on County Road, State Road 672, about halfway between here and Southmore. There's no shoulder on the road. There's no way for a vehicle, whether it's a semi or my wife, who has a flat under car, to get off of the road. And so that thing's sitting in the road, got its markers out, but traffic is at a dead stop because they can't get back and forth between
No
the
shoulders. You guys talking about from 301 all the way through, Mount Picnic Road, all the way east, just trying to understand that.
I think it's appropriately time to do it all the way to 39. It's time to do 39 all the way to 60. It's time, because
My only, and this is the kind of, this is me, I get concerned, if you like build it, they will come kind of thing, could you do like I'm getting in the weeds here, could you do a wider shoulder, 2-lane road that's up to the standard and turn lane? I always find you get stuck behind people.
If you put turn lanes wide, with turn lanes, where we don't make it come to a stop, look at all, it wrecks. It wrecks a lot of goods, a lot of goods, the Brady Road 682. There's wrecks there all the time.
Yeah.
You know,
the answer to your question is, it's an improvement. Yes. Is it the right thing to do? Probably on the short term, yes. Long term, no. Because if you're going to improve, and if we're going to plan to conduct development in this area, then we need to have the transportation systems in place so that people can get in and out of here once all those people come. And it's happening every day. It's happening now. People, because they just can't stomach the traffic at Big Bend, and it takes so long, they're going all the way around Bischoff. They're going all the way around down 39 to 674, going down 674 to the interstate. And then I would bet in most cases going back towards Tampa. And they're still getting bigger and faster. But because they're doing that, it's getting more and more difficult. But even down 674, it's impossible because of the traffic.
So this is a conversation that is occurring in downtown with the county center. Because I know that Commissioner White is very, I don't want to use the word sympathetic, I'm going to say aware. 672, it has been for a long time, and he is pushing for those improvements to occur. I like what you said, Bill, because it can't just end there. Because all you do is move the bottleneck. Right, so this goes back to, I experienced it myself when I came down here a couple of weeks ago. And I think Mr. Dixon, you talked about it when you said, well, you should have gone all the way down to Parish to come back up when they had to have a helicopter land on 75 to take off motorcyclists because everything south of the river is jammed. So what you get is, of course, people that get off like Bloomingdale, go all the way out, go down Ridgeville, come all the way down. People go all the way south, come to Paris, go through, go up, 301 gets jammed. So if you then have to go all the way out to the 2 lanes out here, you have no recourse because the 2 lanes get jammed up. So just because you widened 672 might help the folks that are right here, but then the next wave of folks are going to come and the next wave of folks are going to come. So that is that issue that we talk about with planning, to say that we need to be pressing upon the county to do some of this planning in the rural service area. Because we've already mentioned they are deficient in the urban service area, right? 301, Big Bend, OD, all of these roads need work. So why would you not do some planning out here to say, we will eventually get to do that on 39 to say that we will go ahead and widen it. And going back to what Kimmy and Ron were saying earlier, we need to be able to put these things on the CIP so that you guys can go in front of the Board of County Commissioners and go, it needs to be listed. We need to have these improvements out here. If you're going to build it, you must improve these roads. If the only way that we can all be sure that those roads are going to be built is for them to be listed on a county plan, then that seems like an obvious, yes, let's put those on the plan.
We've been saying that for years.
Jay, let me clarify one thing. Someone mentioned a 50 million. I'm going to try to speak up because I know we had some trouble a while ago with the audio. I'm going to speak up. Can you hear me better now?
No.
No? Can you hear me at all? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Anyway, I just wanted to make a note. I just want to make a note that someone mentioned a $50 million example a while ago.
You know what's going on?
I think somebody else probably.
Can I just mention something about infrastructure ahead of time? We just recently went in front of the Board of County Commission on this property just south of us, where they wanted to put a dirt pit after it was approved for a PD. And we got that denied. We required the decision to deny 4 houses up there for way to do my hospital because infrastructure is not ready and on the wall. But also, they were doing some modifications. Because Eisenhower owns this property, Shelley Lake, and another piece of there were around 800 homes or so. And the whole concern was the roads. And they're gonna redo all around the road, but we got commissioners are making, put a signalization here up at Boyette and Shelley Lake, have to put the turn lane.
About working jointly with the developer. We met, or we went to a commission meeting about a month ago. And the group that was building that, Eisenhower, well, I didn't want to defame anybody, but that Eisenhower, the representative, after the meeting, we were talking, and we stepped up and talked to them, we said, listen, guys, it's time that we quit bickering back and forth, and let's just sit down and talk about what some of the issues are and see if we can come up with a compromise. And they got one guy and one individual said, yeah, that's a good idea. We'd like to do that. He reached out to me and I suggested some of the stuff that they approved the last, at the last, not that I'm ecstatic about that's the right solution, but at least.
But it's something, especially
At
that's what you're
least,
talking about.
we had concerns because they were gonna take away Walmart on the road, and we felt like it's another main artery that would be eliminated. We wanted to keep the connectivity between Walmart and Boyette Road. That was one of the concerns. The other concern was we wanted to make sure that Walmart and Boyette, the alignment was put back in place the way it used to be. So that people weren't coming out of Boyette, getting on 672 and then turning left on Walmart. So, at least they took part of that input and integrated it into a revised plan. So it works, but if we just,
we just gotta stick to our guns and show up there every time. It should automatically be done. I mean, Jay was talking about, if the developer comes in and builds the roads that have to have county approval, the developer comes in and says, we want to approve this road. I don't think the county is going to say no. I mean, for the last 3 or 4 years, I've been quite involved in the rezonings in the area. If I didn't show up in person, I watch every CHM every year, every board meeting, once or twice, just to go over and over and over. I've
never once seen a developer saying, we want to improve this, I mean, or even the county saying no. They're always coming in, we need a standard, we need a deviation standard from the building road subject code. We need a deviation standard, not put sidewalks in, go to a school. We need the variation from doing this. They're always wanting to pull more back.
So you asked about priorities, I think that was the question. What was the main arteries? The main arteries need to be looked at, reviewed, making a determination what could be done on an interim basis and what needs to be done on a long-term basis. I mean, you look, Hillsborough County has hundreds of thousands, millions of inhabitants, and they have a tax structure that I'm sure is, you know, they have a reasonable resource of income or money to fund the needs, all the development, all the new homes. You go out, you know, just, and I'm not going to say this is the best example, but go out towards Hardin County, 1, 2, Polk County, 17 is 4 lane all the way through to Arcadia. It's
All the way to Palm Road.
the Punta.
Yeah, you said, Bill, maybe that's not the long-term solution, but it's, or maybe that is a long-term solution, but it's identifying the intersections to be those first. You know, how do you get on that?
I'm just implying that it's a very rural area. There's very limited tax resources, I'm sure, to pay for that from the local perspective. But they've got that infrastructure in place prior to anything that's occurring relative to development. So what's wrong with Hillsborough County? Why don't they see that? Why don't they, I mean, I don't know. I'm just, there's a management issue here that needs to be addressed.
It's the same way with Manatee County. Big subdivision down in Manatee, go down there, just be Cecil with wildlife man there. Same with it's a very big one, South Manatee down like there. You go in, the 4-lane road, there's circles, you don't find a stop sign anywhere. Traffic flows everywhere. It's just wonderful.
I think Clarence, you're right there, there's a backlog of issues, they're all, there's a lot of issues. I mean, I'm just gonna throw out a simple, I mean, let's say you had 300 homes and then Cammy's talking about 14,000 euros per home, that's probably gonna get you like $4 million to widen the road. That's 10, $11 million per mile.
And that's 20 years. It's $25 million to take a 2-lane road to 4 lanes a mile.
Yeah.
From what the county said.
Depends on which trucks get, that's a good.
And that's not even including the purchase of the lane.
Yeah, that's if they already have the right.
Yeah, what's the cost? $25 million a mile. I could do it cheaper.
Yeah, well, that's the issue. I mean, that's not just a side comment, that's the issue, is that there are mechanisms, ways.
That's all, I'm just saying, when you talk about 4 lane, that's, yeah.
I know it's expensive, but it's a necessity. You don't, if something's not working and you keep doing it and keep doing the same thing, you can expect the same results. And so what? We're expecting the same result, and we're just asking that we stop doing things the same way we've always been doing. Let's do it different. Let's figure it out. Let's recognize we got a problem. Let's determine what we need to do. What are the priorities? How do we fix that problem initially and long term?
The last 10 years, 9 deaths on 672 from Lake and Long. I mean, Long River.
I mean, if you sit there, you're saying exactly what we need to do. You know, maybe this is for some of our partners, we can't hear you all, but on the other line, as we have another meeting, I want to make sure we do it right, and we have the right people. So, Cammy, Ron, give your sense of, like, you know, we talked about Eisenhower, and you guys have contact with them. How do we do that? How do we get all the same folks in the same room? That's what we're
Well,
doing.
it's going to end up being the county's responsibility because they have the contacts to get out and then keep it small enough where it's effective and productive, but it still entails or encompasses the right representation. You have to have being represented, you know, that are in the know of what the issues are.
And that's what we tried to do today, you know, honestly, we wanted everybody here, but I get it. So, I don't know, I'm going off script a little bit here. So we got one scheduled for May 3rd, we're gonna get.
Is it a replication of this discussion, or is it another discussion?
It was to get into kind of the weeds of the actual code, the neighborhood design. You all know what we have today, what we proposed isn't what y'all want. I mean, it hasn't gotten as far as, what we were trying to do is take the existing code, simplify, it, get rid of those design exceptions that you're talking about, like, provide a compromise between, you know, housing types or lot types, which doesn't go as far as y'all want. What I'm hearing is incentivize larger lots, do the half acre or larger. So that's where I want to focus on development, and talk to us about that. So to answer your question, it was just to get into more of the details of the code. I don't know, Jay, I feel like we need to talk about it. Probably we can talk about a different room and what that looks like. Yeah, go off script here, so back in here.
No, yeah, I think, to back to Bill's point about having some more people from the development community, and, you know, I apologize, I wish, the Zoom worked out a little bit better for us, because, Candy and Ron are a wealth of information to be able to provide this conversation. And in the next meeting, we will make sure that that is a little bit better. But just like the idea of bringing somebody from Eisenhower, we can call up Steve Luce and see if Steve can come and chit chat with us. We talked to him about Guatemala because Eisenhower controls large swaths of property down there. So we had some conversations with them on that. So, but Jared is right. The next conversation we were going to have is talking more about the design of the neighborhood. And you guys are still having a lot of conversations about the infrastructure. One of the parts is how can we marry the design of the neighborhood in infrastructure? Because currently today, there are certain requirements that this land use category is supposed to have. And Buddy, you talk about it quite often, saying it's supposed to have a commercial component. And they ask to get out of the commercial component, or the commercial component, they're not asking to get out of it. They're allowed because of the fact that they're using entitlements to something next door to them. That is a current policy. So part of it was to do away with that and bring in other types of infrastructure considerations into it. And that is built into that neighborhood design conversation we want to have. Jared is right in that what we've got currently proposed doesn't take it as far as you guys would like to see it in the lot layout, but it is certainly a good starting point, because I think visually, this is to Jared's point, visually it helps all of us to start to see some of these things on a map and see how the lots will be laid out, and also some visuals of if you were walking down the street, how it would look. I'm gonna take some drives, I'm gonna go out, I'm gonna go look at them this week, some of these others. I think I know what 1 acre lots look like, but I would love to see some new 1 acre lots, you know, new development, and see what people are doing, what they're putting into the project.
Let me jump on. So what we did is we took, here's what, we have civil engineers on layout, neighborhoods all over the country. So we took, here's your existing code today. This is what you could do. It's a lot of what you've already seen, South Coast and some others. And then we took the proposed code and laid it out and showed kind of a mixture of lot types. We looked at it and said, yeah, it's probably not where y'all want to see it. It's not as far as it's not hitting what you want at this point. But let's have, to Jay's point, I think it's a lot of times we're talking a little bit more abstract. Let's show a site and see what it could look like. And
So you got drawings like that?
we're developing the drawings right now.
That's one thing I was gonna ask, if we could, if the developer could, pick a project and show us what it is like now, or what it could be like, that, visually seeing it could,
That's what I envision. We can lay it out. I'd like to get a big projection. We print it, you can see it. Let's have that conversation.
And I think that's a good idea. That'll give us some ideas of what some of the expectations could be. But at the same time, we don't, you know, back on the US, the Big Bend Road extension, the state went out and came up with a plan to make improvements at Big Bend and Interstate 75. And from a local perspective, being the local guy, it was obscene to me, the process they used, because what they did is they went out, they came up with this grand plan they were so proud of. They brought it to the community and they did say, this is one of the things we're thinking about. Do you have any input that could potentially make it better, or do you have concerns that could need to be addressed that aren't addressed in our plan? They didn't do that. They came in and said, this is what we're going to do. What do you think? And the problem is, if it was a great plan, then we probably would have said, hey, no problem, you did good. But that wasn't a good plan. They didn't, you know, it isn't a good plan. Not overall, it's not a good plan at all. Because it didn't include putting entrances at the other, you know, Sims Road and 19th and those kind of things. It didn't include the real issues. It was, I don't know, it actually made me angry that they went out and did all their work and then come up and say, this is what we're going to do. Instead of what you think. Yeah, and then make it productive, where you have that input and you know, you got to move it along and keep productivity moving, or people, like half the people in the room have already left because we're not being productive. We're talking a lot, but we're not making progress. So, I mean, we've made some progress, but we're not making real progress.
Make some progress.
We need to put it down on paper, what the needs are, what are the priorities, and then get start finding.
Well, I guess some of the infrastructure on paper here on the screen, but yeah, I want to get more. I think the next one would be, let's get it on paper again, just kind of scenarios. And obviously, we're on, you know, we took the proposed code, we all know it's not what we want. We almost took a kind of worst case scenario. Let's talk through it.
Well, to be effective in that process, you have to outline what it is you want to do. And then you have to integrate that into the modifications that need to be made in the comprehensive plan, because that needs to be reviewed. And it needs to be upgraded and put in. You know, I don't think it's been reviewed for nearly 20 years. And it's supposed to be, or should be reviewed. It should be reviewed, upgraded, and then it should go into the land development code as well.
So I got some, looks like some points from Candy and Ron, so I'm gonna go back. Ron was talking about his point, you have a road on CIP, excess road building prices must not be given unless magnitude developer can use or provided to sell soon. And Candy mentions that developers will make site access improvements, but there are practical limitations that require design exceptions. Likewise, developers will agree to make roadway improvements, but they are not willing to pay double their share. All the counties that are being discussed have sources of revenue other than impact fees to ensure that the roadway standards. So Candy goes into there are no ad valorem monies budgeted for road improvements in Hillsborough County for the next 3 years. It sounds like you're asking business representative for, yeah, that's just to me, it sounds like exactly like Law Subject Eisenhower to be here May 3rd. We're going to be.
And not just Eisenhower, the developer.
Yeah.
The stakeholders.
That's
it. There's a stakeholder. We're the stakeholders, but they are too. We understand they are.
We understand there is a Cattleman's place shooting event or something that's going on today.
Yes, sir.
And there were a couple of people that would have liked to have been here today who own property and develop property, but they had prior responsibilities for that event.
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that.
We could have met out there at the shotgun club.
We'll go over there.
I really.
You think the Zoom recording is up now? You can hear that with the shell's going on.
I put my grandson in my spot over there to fill
I'd rather be there than here, I'll tell you that.
I want to say something, you know, the developers say, you know, where they got a chunk of land here, they shouldn't be responsible for, you know, building out that whole road up to standards, and then another development comes in across the street and they get the benefit. And I can understand that, but there should be a way that if they do that, then it should be maybe somehow or another, where if that development comes in across the street, that they need to reimburse the other developer, maybe a part of the portion of the money that gets paid out, because I've got the same situation in a shopping center in Gibson, and sewer's a mile away. It costs $750,000 for me to run a sewer line there. Once I run it, anybody else can tap into it, and I don't get paid back. That's unfair. So if, you know, if the developer does build out the road, if somebody does another development comes across the street that isn't the same development now, then yes, they should have to do a kickback to the developer that built out that road up to standard. And that's another way for them to recoup some of their money.
Let me, this developers, we can get into more of this, but we talked a little bit about this. In the packet, we provided a map that shows the different acreages, and don't get on that probably Eisenhower, some of the LLCs there and several. I mean, are there, one of the comments we've heard quite a bit is that we should treat farm differently. There's different areas that should have 2 dwelling units, others should not. What's everybody's thoughts on that?
And by the way, Steve Luce from Eisenhower said, thank you for inviting him. He'll be there May 3rd at 4:30 at the, right there at the Civic Center where you are now. 4:30, May 3rd, he'll be here. Thank you for inviting him. Are there others you want special word from, special invitations? But Steve Luce said he'll be here May 3rd at 4:30 at the Civic Center. Anyone else you want special, emailed or phoned? No sound.
We can, you know, get it on their calendars and confirm it. I mean, I think we probably need to quickly look at that list to make sure we have enough space. But I think that is going to be the most productive, because I don't think it's going to be work well over Zoom, and it should be a face-to-face. If you need to do it even outside, if it's a space and numbers thing, I would highly suggest we do it outside, you know, just to be able to accommodate it, I think, because otherwise we're going to spin back and forth.
Sure. And believe me, yeah, that's why we're here today. We're listening. I mean, maybe for another space to talk about that. We can go out, I'll go outside or go shoot play pitches right now.
Yeah. And I don't know why I'm saying on May 3rd yet, but I think Monday is probably, you know, we should target that day to get the stakeholders together. But I guess a couple of things. If we're going to do that, then we need to start discussion with, you know, what is the concept that the community sees, wants to see, and then get the same kind of feedback from the developers and say, what is your concept? What do you want? What is the concept? And it should be very simple. Doesn't need to be something the county wrote that has 715 pages that you can't understand. It's very simple and outline form so that we can have a place to start. And I guess I'd suggest that we could, from the community perspective, just pull up our little, you know, we work as a community and got a consensus from the community that would, you know, it's nothing but just a broad general area of what our concerns are. So let's get that from us and something from the development side in similar fashion. And maybe somebody that's a facilitator that would merge the two together and come up with what they try to work. And now we only have 4 items that are an issue as opposed to 10.
Ron and Candy, I mean, I like that suggestion. We could pull up the page and a half that you got, or we could print copies of it, whatever that looks like. Ron and Candy, I'm interested from your clients, is that something y'all could help with on your end? Like, what's we've talked about that in the past. So,
You mean the facilitator?
No, I think what he's asking is, can we work with our clients to find out what they think are big issues and kind of make our list of issues and compare notes, so we can compare notes and facilitate through what those issues are. And the answer is, I'll type in chat too, so you can genuinely hear me. And I think we can certainly try. It may be ambitious to do it before May 3rd, but we can certainly try to work on it.
Yeah, if we could share that, you know, across the board to each other in advance of the meeting, where we have an understanding of what the issues are. And I guess I can't speak for the entire community, but I'll speak for myself, and I'll try to help manage the one from the community. You know, we'll be civil. We're not gonna be argumentative, and we're not gonna attack or whatever. We're gonna be civil. We're grown-ups. And we're here to compromise and come up with a reasonable solution.
Thank you. We'll certainly ask. Thank you.
I'll stay. No, I mean, we're grown ups. We can, I don't get everything I want, but I know what I want, and I'm not going to give it up without a fight.
I've been accused of a lot of things, but never acting like a grown-up. So, but I appreciate you, man. Thank you.
What he said.
I heard that part.
We appreciate you acknowledging he's a grown-up.
Oh.
And I want it to be a time that works for everybody too. We can't, honestly can't get everybody. It's gotta be, I think it's just gotta be productive. So we put May 3rd down. I think it's the evening, right?
It is for
4:30, yeah.
Oh, excellent,
Does that work?
excellent. And these folks that haven't gotten to this meeting physically, if they can get here, they better start about 3 o'clock from Tampa. And they need to drive through the traffic that's already here.
It's a 4.
That's man, you do realize people work till 5.
There are,
And then they have a 45-minute, an hour drive to get home.
And you're on how about your clients and what we're talking about, does that work? Again, I'm just trying to figure it out.
Sorry. I'm sorry, I didn't hear. What are you asking
Are
me?
you asking if 4:30 still works because of traffic starting
Yes.
3:30 or 4?
Yeah, we're asking about 4:30 on May 3rd.
Either is whatever is convenient. I didn't have an issue last time. I think we started at 5 and I didn't have an issue with traffic.
Yeah, we made it in about 55 minutes. Sometimes it takes us an hour and a half.
Gotta use Crosstown.
Loaded at 4:30, you're just gonna, you won't be able to get.
Your concern is 4:30.
well, I think a lot of people, they work.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to be here at that time, but at the same time, if we started at 6, then, you know, we need to have an agenda, and we need to have a discussion that's productive, and we don't need to take 2.5 hours to get it done, because people aren't going to want to start at 6 o'clock and be here at 8:30, still talking. So, I guess compromise on the time, and then just be as productive as we can, and as those who can't get here at the start, they can join, you know, when they can get here. I would expect that developers would have people to be. Yeah, and I think.
Don't get it into the you can't get here. I come from Tampa. It's not easy.
And this was a Saturday morning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so May the 3rd, both sides come up with what are the major issues that need to be resolved, and then we'll see if we can make it right. And I tell you what, the county better be involved, because we can sit here as an independent group, you know, bipartisan or whatever, and it won't mean nothing if the county isn't here, you know.
We got the plan that's been,
Yeah.
Which plan are you referring to, the?
Community plan?
Yes.
It's on the internet, I mean, it's not having the internet, it's on there.
It's on that plan commission site. We could, jam it.
Yeah, we could print some of
And
that.
well, I will say this about the community plan. The community plan we developed probably 10 or 15 years ago, and it's still a good plan, but it's on the agenda that it needs to be revised, because it, 10, 15 years ago, it was a completely different world than it is today. So if I were to, that's when we started this RP-2 discussion. We've been doing this.
There wasn't a new plan.
We have conference calls, we were having once a week.
And was there an update of the community plan a year and a half?
Now, the community plan is not being updated. We're just updating the land use category, which is something that for planning commission, we have to keep that in the back of our mind. Because if I put something in a policy with the residential plan to land use that goes against your own plan, then that's out, it's not consistent. Then I've actually gone against the bond plan, and I have to update the bond plan. The Board of County Commissioners did not tell us to update your bond plan. So as a side note, every time we have these conversations, I check myself against the plan. Because if all of a sudden you guys say you want to do X, Y, and Z, and that changes your plan, I have to put that as a recommendation, because then I have to tell the board, I have to come back out here for another year and a half to update the plan.
Yeah, well, and that's the point, is the plan needs update, that's all. The plan, a reasonably good plan, it was good at the time, but it's just like the comprehensive land use plan. It's not a legitimate representation of today, and we need to update both of them.
Yeah. So Kenny asked the question, it's my understanding you're asking without an interest, that we bring our ideas to the meeting. We could certainly get with our clients to try to coordinate something. It sounds like Ron's got Steve Lutz here at 4:30, better than 3 or 6. Thanks, Ron, and I'm responding and saying, correct, we would want to have all interests represented, have the same conversation, understand everyone's concept, share it in advance if possible. I know maybe it's coming soon. We got next week, and that's the following Monday. See what we can agree on, and understand what we don't agree on.
If we can come to consensus on at least most of the items. And I'd say we need to limit it. We don't need 100 people in the room, because we're not going to make any progress.
And that's, yeah, I agree. We want to make sure, we're not trying to leave anybody out from taking our conversation.
For we have a board, developer, they already have all. Yeah,
Well, sure.
have an agenda, and we're gonna follow that agenda right now.
That's what I said, we need a facility. We need to step through and, look at both lists of priorities, and try to find some common ground and determine what the real issues that are remaining. Let's work on those instead of close there.
I mean, I feel like the infrastructure is the one we keep hitting on that everybody.
Well, it's a major issue.
Infrastructure, density,
Planning,
credits,
accountability, there's a lot of things to address.
Well, that's all I got. I think that's good. Anybody on the Zoom call want to add anything before we kind of close up?
No, thank you though.
Thank you for your time today. Thank you for your patience with us.
We'll see you in person.
Yeah, for your patience.
Yeah, being the silent partners,
Yeah.
because we can't understand it.
Silent partners. Only Zoom could shut me up. Thank you, guys.
Guys,
All right, thanks.
if you're